What's up, everybody? Matt Gajewski here, back again with the Odd Shopper channel. And today I'm here talking college football bets ahead of week one, the main slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you by Caesar Sportsbook. They have an offer for new users. Make a $50 wager and get $250 in the form of bonus bets. You'll get one $50 bonus bet right away when that original wager settles, and then $50 each of the next 4 weeks. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Take advantage of this. Huge for the bankroll and huge heading into the latter part of college football. But we move forward to week 2. One housekeeping note, as many of you know, myself and Ben Raza do the Betting You Show every single week, focusing on the marquee games for sports betting. I was lucky enough to get clearance to get into some of the greasy games. So I would like some feedback from you guys. I plan on talking some of the marquee games and some of the greasy games, but order-wise, do you want the greasy ones first? Do you want the premier ones first? I would love to know, just for ordering purposes, to give you guys the most out of this video possible. But if you've given me the feedback, thank you. I'll waste no more of your time. And we're going to start with some of the deeper games on the Saturday slate right now. First one I want to talk about is FAU taking on Ohio. We've seen Ohio take a lot of money since Curtis Rourke was ruled into this game. FAU is now minus 3.5. The total is 61.5, which is shooting up, presumably because of Rourke. But I made the mistake of betting FAU at minus 4.5. I still like FAU in this game. Ohio's had a kind of a rough go of things to start the year. They already got Rourke hurt once. Their offensive lines allowed 12 pressures on 74 dropbacks. And that's an issue to me because they played San Diego State and Long Island. Both of those games, I mean, they shouldn't be the most difficult opponents, especially Long Island. But San Diego State, that's a team that I'm down on in the Mountain West. They played them to 7 points, and they had chance after chance to win that game. Even when Rourke was out, their backup couldn't hit some open receivers. Then San Diego State ended up getting past them. All this to say, you're playing close games against San Diego State and Long Island. Not really too promising moving forward. FAU is a team I've been trying to buy on this offseason. I like Tom Herman as a coach, and FAU is a good signal caller in Casey Thompson. They kept him clean in the first game, only a 17% pressure rate. Offensive line only allowed 2 pressures. That's solid. They played a bad team, so it was Monmouth, but basically doing what you're supposed to do, I think, is solid here. The defense, I think, is loaded, but right away, what stood out to me is they had 4 starters from last year. They're not even starting. So you've got like really good transfers coming in and taking over for some of these players that weren't great. You look at FAU, last year they were 88th on defense. Because of the players they brought in, I'm expecting significant improvement. And again, this Ohio team's banged up. Rourke's coming back, but they've had injuries to receivers. Sam Wiglitz didn't play in their last game. Jacoby Jones hasn't played yet this year. They're going to be overmatched against this FAU team. And I think you could maybe wait on this because Ohio's taking money. If you could find a 3 in the market, be more than happy with that, even with Rourke playing in this game. Next one, we'll talk about Sam Houston State Air Force. I grabbed Sam Houston State plus 14.5. It's been hovering around this, so I think you could probably find one in the market, even if you wait. I'm seeing juiced 13.5s right now for Sam Houston. Look for a 14 if you can, because every point does matter. These are 2 slow, run-heavy teams. But I like Sam Houston, especially on their defense. Air Force played Robert Morris in their first game. They basically didn't show anything. Air Force does have a new quarterback. They have a new running back. They lost Zeke Daniels and Brad Roberts, but the foundation of that offense is intact. It's 4 returning starters there. On defense, they are replacing a decent amount here, and they lost Camby Goff to an injury. We'll see if he returns in this game, but I'm not expecting that to. Their front 7 is completely rebuilt. And if you look at Sam Houston State, they're a team that is going to run the ball. They didn't get a ton out of Keegan Shoemaker at quarterback. 0 big-time throws, 3 turnover-worthy plays. But what I will say is he had 2 massive drops from his receivers. One of them on a 3rd down really would have put them in a scoring position, but instead halted a drive. And they still covered against BYU. Sam Houston can run the ball decently. I think they'll be able to do so against Air Force, which again, they were able to stop Robert Morris, but this is going to be a different unit in Sam Houston. And then on defense, man, this defense was awesome. They were able to stop Keaton Slovis, Aiden Robbins, what I thought was going to be a pretty decent BYU offense. Right away, they only allowed 3.9 yards per play for a team jumping up from the FCS level. That is awesome here. Right away, 2 run-based teams, 2 good defenses. It's a lot of points to cover for Air Force. We're going to back the dog in Sam Houston. Next game, we'll get to Rutgers and Temple. This is one where Temple's been taking some money, and I'll be honest with you, I do not agree with this. I think Rutgers should be the play here. I'm going to play him at -9. Temple beat Akron 24-21. They had a 47.5% post-game win expectancy. What that means, you play this game exactly with the plays that were on the field. Akron wins this game more than 50% of the time. That's a big issue. Temple, they bring back their signal caller, E.J. Warner. He was okay. 1 big-time throw, 1 turnover-worthy play. He was pressured on 25.5% of his dropbacks. Offensive line allowed 8 of those. They couldn't run on Akron at all, which is a problem here. You look at their yards per attempt. Temple was at 1.9 on the ground. This is horrible. Now you're facing a Rutgers team which is defensively sound. They're built through their defense. Temple did play good run defense against Akron, but they lost most of their front 7 this year. Like a ton of starters in their front 7 are gone on defense. You're now facing a defensive, run-heavy Rutgers team, which has good players overall. So I think they're at a disadvantage here. Rutgers actually got a decent amount out of Wimsatt. He was good running the ball. Their offensive line only allowed 3 pressures on 31 dropbacks, so he'll be upright in this game, especially against that remade Temple front 7. 1 big-time throw, 1 turnover-worthy play for Wimsatt. Think he's completely fine. Samuel Brown and Aaron Young didn't play. I think maybe we get one of those guys back in the running back room. And then this defense is good. We knew the Rutgers defense was going to be good. They returned a lot of players from last year. Showed out against Northwestern, kind of one of those situations where you did exactly what we thought you were going to do. That's good here. And Temple, I think, is a worse team than Northwestern. So I'm expecting this defense to slaughter E.J. Warner, pressure him. Temple couldn't run anyway, so it's a big mismatch. Now, neither team's going to be particularly fast or efficient on offense, so it is kind of a lofty number to lay. But I do think Rutgers can eclipse this in this game, similar to what we saw last week when they beat Northwestern. Next one we go to. This is one that's kind of interesting to me. I've been favoring Texas State since open against UTSA, but money's pouring in on UTSA, and I don't necessarily agree with this. Texas State is a completely rebuilt team, and they just beat Baylor. So it's tough. You don't want to overreact to something like this, but 61.3% post-game win expectancy. Baylor's quarterback hurt in the game. Baylor missed a field goal. Baylor had a turnover on downs at the Texas State 31. But, I mean, right after that turnover on downs, Texas State promptly fumbled it back. So there's, not too much there. Baylor threw an interception on the Texas State 5. Even with all that stuff, Texas State still had a positive post-game win expectancy. There are issues with this team. TJ Finley was pressured a ton, 35% of his dropbacks. Offensive line wasn't great. But they're a weird team to prepare for. They run 4 wide. They spread you out. That's going to be an issue, I think, against UTSA here. And then, man, this Texas State defense actually got a lot of pressure themselves. Baylor QBs faced pressure on 52% of their dropbacks. That's pretty good pass rush here, especially for a unit that's going to be facing a UTSA offensive line, which has not been very good. And we saw Frank Harris under pressure a little bit in that first game. That O-line did not grade out well per Pro Football Focus. I have some major concerns here. And then I do think that Texas State scores with UTSA. We saw some weird stuff in the UTSA Houston game. Frank Harris had 3 turnovers, of course, but Houston had a turnover on downs at the UTSA 19. Both teams missed field goals. This could have been a higher scoring game than the final score indicated. So I do think Texas State can play with this UTSA team. And then aside from the offensive line, they lost a decent amount on defense. DeCorian Clark still didn't play. Willie McCoy also missed the game. I thought he was going to be the primary backup. There's some issues with UTSA. I'd wait on this, honestly. I plan to wait and hopefully take a +14 or something with Texas State. But that's the side I like in this game. Money continues to pour in on UTSA. Next one, we'll talk North Carolina App State. This is one I did already grab and took this at -16. Was very lucky to do so. It's now up to around 19 in some spots. Try to grab a current line for you guys after making the sheet overnight. Looks like it's still 19 in some spots, but I don't mind the number. I think North Carolina rolls App State. A lot of reasons why. We didn't see anything from App State in week 1. They played Gardner-Webb. They played fast. They lost their quarterback. And honestly, there's a lot of issues here. Between Aguilar and Berger, the two quarterbacks for App State, their offensive line allowed pressure on 41% of dropbacks. If you guys saw North Carolina in week 1 against South Carolina, we know they have a good pass rush. Aside from, Rutgers, they add some excellent guys here in this unit. Amari Gaynor comes over. He had 6 quarterback pressures. Like Desmond Evans had 3. Tamari Fox had 3. Javari Ritzy had 3. They're deep, and they're going to absolutely eat a horrible App State offensive line. App State only returns 4 starters on defense. Their top player in week 1 was a Richmond transfer. They're now facing Drake May. So, 2 major mismatches here. One, offensive defensive line in favor of North Carolina. And then, just like Drake May and his slew of weapons taking on a completely rebuilt App State defense. Still no word on Tez Walker. Nate McCullum is listed as day-to-day. He would be a big boost to the receiving game, but ultimately they didn't even need that boost against South Carolina. And now they're now facing a severely underwhelming opponent in App State. Next one, we'll get to Troy, Kansas State. This is a fun one. I think this is honestly just a points play. I took Troy plus 17, and I think if you can find that number, you play it. Kansas State played Southeastern Missouri State in week 1. Troy played Stephen F. Austin. Troy's got a lot of guys back. Gunnar Watson returns. Kansas State lost a ton, especially on defense. They lost a couple NFL DBs. They lost an NFL edge rusher. They lost a couple guys in their offensive line. Deuce Vaughn, 2 of their top 3 receivers. Just a big spread for Kansas State to cover with so many new faces. Not to mention, both of these teams are going to play slow. Kansas State's going to run the ball a lot, which new clock rules don't exactly lend itself to a ton of points being scored in this game. And then Troy plays good defense. So right away, it's just a lot of points to cover, even though I do think Kansas State is the rightful favorite. We'll back Troy plus 17. Really fun one here. Jacksonville State, Coastal Carolina. I told you we were going to get deep here before we talk about some of the marquee games, but getting really in the weeds. Sun Belt Conference USA matchup. Coastal's a 13-point favorite, over under 57. I hit the over on this immediately. Both these teams play extremely fast. Jacksonville State 22nd in seconds per play. Coastal Carolina 49th. Coastal Carolina's defense is awful. They allowed 9.1 yards per pass attempt. And that was while facing Chase Garbers for half the game. Dante Moore came in and absolutely slaughtered them. Also allowed 4.9 yards per carry on the ground. That's a little more pertinent because Jacksonville State is a grounded pound team. They have about a 70% run rate, and they have a mobile signal caller. So that is going to stress this Coastal Carolina defense and allow them to score points. From here, Coastal's biggest concern against UCLA was that horrific offensive line. Fortunately, Jacksonville State, a much weaker level of competition here. I think they'll be able to keep McCall cleaner. You still have Pinckney. You still have Brown, those elite receiving options that create explosive plays for the offense. Plus, Jacksonville State, 82nd in total defense through 2 games. That's facing UTEP and East Tennessee State. We should be able to get some points across the board here with these 2 fast offenses. Minnesota, Eastern Michigan. Almost hesitated to talk about this game, but want to at least bring it up quickly. Eastern Michigan is going to get absolutely rolled in this game. You have I think a Minnesota team that's improved, but ultimately didn't show a ton in that Nebraska win. They should have lost. They had a 5.7 post-game win expectancy, but I'm hopeful they'll get it together a little more with their star receivers, Brevin Spanford, Kaliak Manis, Dylan Wright, Ottman Bell, against an Eastern Michigan team which struggled against Howard. 33-23 was the score in that game, and now they're facing a much more difficult Big Ten team. This is up a couple points. It was at minus 19, now seeing 20.5. I would not back this over 21, but at least one I want to mention in this greasy games section of the VOD. We're 15 minutes in, so I'm going to halt it here. We talked about all the big games like Notre Dame, NC State. I have Notre Dame. Nebraska, Colorado. I took Colorado -3. Ben and I talked Utah, Baylor, Texas A&M, Miami. I took Iowa -4, Ole Miss -7, SMU +16, Texas Tech +7, UCF -3.5. Over in Texas, Alabama 54.5. over Washington State, Wisconsin, 58.5. Arizona plus 10, Arizona State plus 3.5, under Stanford, USC, 71, and Auburn minus 6.5 against Cal. If you'd like full breakdowns for those games, head over to Betting U. That is the video and podcast on this very channel with Ben Raza and myself. We break down each and every one of these games. And if you have any feedback, let me know. Comment section. We can do whatever we want with these videos. So if you have something you want to say, let me know. I will take it into consideration and hopefully make some changes moving forward. With that, I am out. Good luck, everybody. We'll see you again next week.